My guest is a professor of economics that has spent many years teaching in the United States of America. He taught at the University of Ghana, Legon, in the 70s. He's a man that is known to speak his mind, and he's written quite a bit about Africa, focuses on governance issues, and just all the challenges of development. We're hoping in this interview to press him on a number of subjects, especially because he has shown quite a bit of interest and has been discussing the emerging oil and gas industry. What are his views on it? But especially with regard to the government's plans for it, the arrangements, the choice of partners, and perhaps more importantly, just the issue of China and China's interest in Africa of late. Professor George Ayittey, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me on your program.
What do you think of the way things are unfolding in the emerging oil and gas industry?
Well, I think it could be a boom to Ghana's economy. But at the same time, we have to be extremely careful in terms of how we manage that oil resource and make sure that it doesn't turn into a curse, as has happened in many countries like Nigeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and so forth. So, you know, it's good that we've discovered oil, but the most critical, important issue is how we manage that particular resource.
What must we do to ensure that oil in Ghana doesn't become a curse?
Well, first of all, right now, the whole issue has become politicized, and which is terrible.
You think so?
It is. It has been politicized. I mean, we've heard a lot of brouhaha about this Cosmos Exxon, you know, deal, for example, and the way the government is strong-arming and intervening and sort of to abrogate deals, for example. It gives Ghana a very, very bad name, an image abroad.
But what are you saying, that when a government comes into power and is not unhappy, it must do nothing with what has happened
That's
before?
not what I'm saying. You know, when a government is not happy with a particular deal, the government can take the recourse and take that particular issue to court,
right,
rather than acting somewhat arbitrarily. And
you think this is arbitrary? That's the point.
That is the point. You see, this is the message that it sends to investors, and you know, it sort of sends a very cold chill down their spine, in terms of, you know, that look, you know, they can come here and sign a deal, but then, you know, come and a change in government, you know, that deal could be off. You know, that is not the kind of signal you want to send to investors. Okay, sure, the government can have some qualms about certain particular deals, for example. But the government should take these particular misgivings to court and let a court decide. This is what is meant by the rule of law. And contracts must be obeyed and must be followed if we want to attract foreign investors here. But look, we don't have the technology to exploit the oil. Okay? And that's why it's necessary to have foreign firms come in. But at the same time, we should guard against, you know, exploitation by, let's say, foreign firms, for example. Okay? And that's what we put in place. We have to put in place certain control measures and safeguards to ensure that the Ghanaian people actually benefit, okay, from this particular oil bonanza.
What do you need to do to ensure that Ghanaians benefit from bonanzas?
Well, the government is going to derive some revenue, number one, from the royalties, number two, from taxes, okay, and number three, also from profits.
Is that good enough?
Well, that is the standard deal. That's the standard forms of, you know, revenue that flows into the government. Okay, it's the same standard, you know, forms of revenue that flowed into Nigeria's government coffers. Okay, but in the case of Nigeria, between 1970 and 2004, more than $450 billion in oil revenue flowed into Nigerian government coffers. But according to Nuhumara Ribadu, the former chairman of the
fraud, is it the Fraud Commission?
Yes, the Nigeria former Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. 412 billion of that was stolen.
By
Nigeria's military rulers, which means that the oil revenue was simply squandered. That must never happen here in Ghana. And the thing is, if you go to Nigeria is an oil-rich country, and yet the government cannot provide electricity to its people. Only 30% of Nigerians have access to reliable supplies of reliable supplies of electricity. And
you're saying that once the resources are there, they should be able to do that?
Once you have that kind of resources, you must make sure the resource, the revenue is put to a good use so that the people can benefit from it.
But how can that be? I don't understand it. I mean, how can Nigerians, 150 million people, sit around for many years and let the military or the leadership simply feast on what is really for
Well, this is where you have to put some control and safeguards, in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And it's not just Nigeria, it's Angola too, all right, where billions in oil revenue has been looted, and people are desperately poor in Angola. The same thing in Equatorial Guinea, where President Obiang says that he is the one who is in charge of the oil revenue into Equatorial Guinea. And he would not disclose how much the country earns from the oil exports, because he says it's a state secret.
He says that?
Yes. Can you imagine this? Now, in Ghana, we have to make sure that, look, there are certain countries which are taking certain safeguards. In the case of the Cameroonian-Chadian pipeline, for example, we recommended that a certain percentage of the oil revenue be placed into an escrow account, in which the government cannot touch, that can be managed by an independent body.
And distributed to who?
And make sure that the people of the people on whose land the oil was taken actually benefit from it. So a certain percentage...
Just them? What about the nation?
Well, so that a certain percentage of the oil revenue is placed in... I didn't say all of that, a certain percentage, to ensure. Of course, the rest of the oil revenue can be put into the government general fund for the total development of the...
But government will disburse the resources, Professor. So, I mean, I'm saying, how do you take it away from them?
Well, once it enters into the government, the government, once it enters into government coffers, it's like a big black hole. It simply disappears,
So you don't think it should go into there?
You have to earmark a certain percentage, of the oil revenue. Here in Ghana, we can say that, we're going to earmark a certain percentage of the oil revenue and make sure that we use that to fix our infrastructure. The railway system, for example, is a disgrace in this country. You use that to fix the railways, use that to fix the roads, use that to provide electricity, for example, so that all Ghanaians can benefit. You can take measures. Parliament can take issues, certain measures to ensure that this happens. You can take a certain percentage, say 10%, 20% of that, and put that in a certain particular fund.
Is that the case? I mean, you see, I don't want this to be theoretical. I mean, right now, do you know what the position is? I believe that is the position of the current government.
Right now, the Parliament is debating how to use some of the oil revenue in terms of some of the things that I have mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's a good step in the right direction. But you see, the people actually also need to be mobilized.
I would imagine, because I mean, I don't understand how, like in Nigeria, we speak about it like helpless people and the government has taken all the money. Why? People must have said, get up and get on with it and not let themselves be cheated like that.
Well, we should not behave like the Nigerians, like helpless victims. Now here in Ghana, we should be vigilant. And actually, we should call upon
I agree completely with
our MPs to be vigilant in terms of there should be total transparency in how that oil revenue is utilized.
Better than cream cheese and bagels, better than honey on bread, better than champagne and pretzels, better than breakfast in bed, better than chili rellenos, better than chocolate eclairs, better than hothouse tomatoes, better than fresh bartlett pears, better than dining a la carte or simply gastronomic art, better than anything except being in love.